500 years ago, a man in exile wrote a book that told rulers the truth they were too proud to admit to themselves. Niccolò Machiavelli did not write about how power should work. He wrote about how power actually works, stripped of the comforting lies people tell about virtue, loyalty, and fairness. He wrote for a prince who needed to survive in a world where kindness gets you killed and appearances save your life. What almost nobody says out loud is that the thing ruling most of your waking hours right now was built on the exact same logic. It does not wear a crown. It does not carry a sword. It lives inside your phone, and it studied you more carefully than any prince ever studied his court. This is not a metaphor stretched for effect. The algorithm that decides what you see, what you feel, and increasingly what you believe, operates on principles Machiavelli would have recognized instantly and admired without shame. He would not have been horrified by it. He would have taken notes. Machiavelli's prince needed soldiers, alliances, spies, and a treasury to hold territory. The algorithm needs none of that. It does not conquer land, it conquers attention, and attention turned out to be easier to take than a city ever was. You did not surrender it in a war. You handed it over in small pieces, every time you picked up your phone instead of sitting with a silence you did not want to feel. A ruler who can occupy your mind for 6 hours a day without ever raising an army has achieved something Machiavelli's princes could only dream about. He wrote that a wise ruler thinks constantly about war even during peace. The algorithm thinks constantly about your attention, even while you believe you are simply relaxing. There is no armistice with it. There is only your attention and whether you notice it is being taken. One of Machiavelli's most uncomfortable claims is that a prince does not need to actually possess virtue. He only needs to appear to possess it, because most people judge by what they see, not by what is true. The algorithm runs on the exact same principle, except it applies it to you instead of to a ruler. It does not care who you actually are at 11 at night when no one is watching. It cares about the version of you that performs well, the angle, the caption, the 15 seconds that hold attention. You learn, without anyone teaching you directly, to optimize the visible self and quietly neglect the real one. A person can spend an hour curating a photo that says their life is full and spend the rest of the night feeling completely empty, and the platform will never register the difference because it was never built to see the real you. It was built to reward the performance. Machiavelli wrote that it is safer for a ruler to be feared than loved, because love depends on the goodwill of others while fear depends on you. The algorithm figured out something even more efficient. It does not need you to fear it directly. It needs you to fear irrelevance, and it can produce that fear with terrifying precision. The read receipt that goes unanswered, the post that gets no engagement, the sense that everyone else's life is louder and fuller than yours, these are not accidents of design. They are the closest thing the modern world has to Machiavelli's fear, except it is not a prince holding the whip, it is your own mind trained to flinch at silence. You do not fear the platform. You fear what the platform has convinced you silence means about your worth. Machiavelli actually cautioned rulers against flatterers, warning that a court full of people who only tell you what you want to hear will eventually blind you to real danger. He wanted his prince surrounded by people willing to tell the truth. The algorithm has no interest in your survival, only your engagement, so it does the opposite of what Machiavelli advised. It shows you opinions you already hold, faces that already please you, content that confirms what you already believe before you open the app. This is flattery at industrial scale, and it is more dangerous than any courtier because it never runs out of things to agree with you about. A human flatterer gets tired or transparent eventually. A system with unlimited content never does. It will agree with you forever and call it personalization. Machiavelli understood that a ruler who keeps his subjects divided against each other rarely needs to worry about them uniting against him. Factions that distrust one another are too busy fighting to notice who benefits from the fight. Look at how effortlessly the algorithm sorts people into camps, feeds each camp a slightly different reality, and lets the resulting outrage generate the engagement it was designed to harvest. Nobody had to plan the argument you had with a stranger online last week. The system simply rewarded the version of the conversation most likely to keep both of you typing. You think you are debating a person. In practice, you are performing for a system that profits regardless of who is right, and sometimes profits more when nobody is. Rulers throughout history understood a simple mechanism: a distracted population rarely questions the structure it lives under. Machiavelli was not the one who invented bread and circuses, but he understood the principle at the core of it: a satisfied and occupied subject asks fewer dangerous questions. The infinite scroll is the modern circus, endlessly renewing itself, so there is never a natural stopping point where you might ask what exactly you are doing with your one life. Notice how rarely you decide to stop scrolling. Usually something else decides for you: a dead battery, an obligation, exhaustion. The feed itself has no ending built into it, because an ending is the one thing that would let you ask what you got out of the last 2 hours. There is a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from managing an image nobody forced you to build but everybody expects you to maintain. A parent posts a smiling family photo an hour after a fight nobody outside the house will ever know about. A coworker posts about being grateful for their job the same week they are quietly applying elsewhere. This is not hypocrisy in the simple sense, it is the same instinct Machiavelli described in his Prince, who must appear merciful, faithful, and humane, whether or not he is any of those things in private, because the appearance is what the audience actually judges. The difference is that the prince chose that mask deliberately as a strategy. Most people wearing it online never chose it. They just noticed, one platform at a time, that the honest version of themselves got less attention than the curated one, and adjusted without ever calling it a strategy at all. A ruler who is entirely predictable becomes easy to plan against. Machiavelli's prince benefits from a certain controlled unpredictability, keeping others slightly uncertain of what comes next. The algorithm reproduces this effect through something simpler and colder, a reward that arrives on no fixed schedule. Sometimes the post gets nothing. Sometimes it gets more attention than you expected. Your mind cannot help but keep checking because the uncertainty itself is what keeps you hooked, in the same way a gambler is not chasing money so much as chasing the next unpredictable pull. Machiavelli used unpredictability to keep rivals off balance. Modern platforms use it to keep you reaching for your phone 40 times a day without ever deciding to. Machiavelli's political world treats alliances as instruments, useful exactly as long as they serve a purpose and disposable the moment they stop. It is uncomfortable to notice how naturally this logic has crept into ordinary relationships once they exist online. A friendship gets quietly measured by whether someone likes your posts. A follower count becomes a kind of court, and the people in it get sorted, consciously or not, by what they contribute to your visible worth. Someone stops replying to a friend who never comments on their content, without ever admitting that is the reason. This is not cruelty in the dramatic sense. It is smaller and more common than that, a slow reclassification of people from companions into audience and audience into currency. Machiavelli's most quoted and most misunderstood idea is that the end justifies the means, and whatever the philosophical debate around that phrase, the underlying observation is brutally accurate about how people actually get evaluated. Nobody online cares about your intention. They care about the number underneath the post. A joke that was meant kindly but lands as cruel gets punished exactly as if it had been cruel on purpose. A carefully honest post that underperforms gets treated as if it never happened at all. The algorithm has fully absorbed this Machiavellian standard, results are the only currency it recognizes, and it applies that standard to millions of people every single day without a hint of mercy, because it was never designed to have any. A ruler who wants to control a population benefits enormously if that population cannot easily compare experiences and realize they are being handled differently. Machiavelli understood the strategic value of isolating rivals from each other before they could organize. Personalization achieves something similar without anyone intending it as control. Two people can look at the same platform and see two entirely different worlds, tailored so precisely to their existing beliefs that they lose the ability to even describe what the other person is seeing. You cannot compare notes with someone whose reality was built from a different set of signals than your own. This is not a conspiracy in a room somewhere. It is simply what happens when a system optimizes each person's feed in total isolation from everyone else's, and the isolation itself becomes the control. Nobody feels like they are being ruled. That is precisely the point, and Machiavelli knew it. A subject who believes he acts freely is far easier to govern than one who feels the leash. You choose what to watch next, technically. You tap the video, technically. But the menu of options in front of you was constructed by a system that already predicted, with disturbing accuracy, which option you were most likely to choose before you ever saw it. That is not the same thing as freedom, even though it feels exactly like freedom from the inside. Machiavelli's prince maintained the appearance of consent among his subjects because consent that feels voluntary requires no enforcement. The algorithm does not need to force your hand. It only needs to arrange your options so well that force is never necessary. Here is the part almost nobody wants to look at directly. Once a person has been shaped by the system long enough, they begin applying its logic to the people around them without noticing the shift. A manager starts managing employees the way the feed manages them, through unpredictable reward and calculated distance, praise given just often enough to keep people compliant, criticism sharp enough to keep them anxious. A parent starts curating a child's image on social media the same way a brand curates a product. This is not a coincidence. People raised inside a Machiavellian system of attention eventually start running it on others, because it is the only operating model of relationships they have practiced daily for years. You do not need to read The Prince to become a small prince yourself. The algorithm has already been teaching the syllabus. Watch how quickly office culture absorbed the same instincts. A colleague sends a message at 11 at night, not because the matter is urgent, but because visible availability has become its own kind of currency, the appearance of dedication mattering more than the substance of it. A manager praises a team publicly in a channel everyone can see, while delivering the real feedback privately and far more coldly, because the public version exists for image, not for truth. This is Machiavelli's separation between appearance and reality, playing out in a Slack channel instead of a royal court, and almost nobody in the room would ever call it that, because it has become simply how modern work is done. Even families are not exempt from this logic anymore. A holiday photo gets sent to the group chat within minutes, curated and cheerful, while the actual dinner that produced it involved an argument nobody photographed. Relatives begin, without ever discussing it openly, competing quietly for whose life looks fuller in the thread, whose children look happier, whose year looks more accomplished. Machiavelli wrote about court politics among nobles vying for a ruler's favor. The modern equivalent is a family group chat where affection gets measured, however unconsciously, by likes and replies, and where the sibling who posts less starts to feel, without ever being told directly, slightly less loved. A person can maintain a mask for a long time, but Machiavelli's own prince eventually needed private moments where the performance could stop, a room with no audience. Modern life increasingly denies people even that. The phone is in the same room as the private breakdown. The camera is always technically available. People report feeling exhausted in a way that has no clear cause, and the cause is often simply this: there is no longer a reliable space where the visible self can be set down completely. Burnout is frequently described as a professional problem, but its origin is often much closer to this constant, low-grade performance that never fully switches off, even in bed, even at 2 in the morning, scrolling through other people's curated calm. It would be comforting to end this by blaming the algorithm entirely, as if you were simply a passive victim of a machine with no say in the matter. Machiavelli's realism would not let you off that easily. He believed that people generally choose comfort and self-interest over difficult virtue, and that a smart observer of power should account for that instinct rather than pretend it does not exist in himself. Nobody forces you to check the phone 40 times a day. You do it because part of you wants exactly what it offers: the flattery, the distraction, the fear of missing something. Understanding the mechanism does not make you innocent of participating in it. It only makes you a more honest witness to your own behavior, which is precisely the kind of unsentimental clarity Machiavelli respected most. This will not end with advice to delete every app and retreat to a quieter life, because that promise rarely holds, and this channel is not in the business of comforting lies. What Machiavelli actually offers is not peace, it is clarity, and clarity is a colder gift than peace, but a more useful one. Knowing that the feed rewards performance over honesty lets you decide, deliberately, when to perform and when to refuse. Knowing that outrage is profitable to the system lets you notice the exact moment you are being pulled into a fight that benefits no one but the platform hosting it. A prince who understands the game is not free of the game, he is simply no longer its fool. That distinction between the ruled and the merely obedient is the entire difference Machiavelli was ever trying to teach. Machiavelli never pretended that power was kind, and he never asked anyone to like what he saw, only to see it accurately. The algorithm governing your attention right now was not built by a philosopher who read The Prince's inspiration, but it operates on principles he would have recognized within the first 5 minutes of watching it work. Appearance over reality, fear over love, flattery as leash, division as control, isolation as strategy, the illusion of choice standing in for actual freedom. None of this makes you foolish for living inside it, everyone alive today does. It only makes you slightly less blind if you finally see the shape of the room you have been standing in. You would have loved the algorithm. The only real question left is what it has been quietly making out of you.